Hi everyone, my name's Sean with Axiom Tutoring, and today I'm going to be your GCSE math tutor. The topic we're going to be looking at today is how to find percentages of an amount, and the questions and examples in this video are intended to be done without the aid of a calculator. Now, it's worth talking a little bit about why we use percentages. Why are they the most widely used type of proportion? Let's consider a few fractions. Let's consider the fraction 6 out of 25. Let's consider an equivalent fraction, 12 out of 50. Now, these two fractions represent the same proportion. Let's try multiplying by 2 again, and we get 24 over 100. That means that 6 over 25 is equivalent to 24%, because percent just means per out and centage 100, a fraction out of 100. And they're a very efficient way of fairly and quickly comparing quantities. Imagine that you have three other proportions that you're given: 25 out of 50, 150 out of 300, and 4 out of 10. If we write these as percentages instead, 50%, 50%, and 40%, the comparison immediately becomes much clearer. They also have vast practical applications, some that you can see in your everyday life right now. Imagine that you want to buy an item, and imagine there's a sale on that item, and it's a sale of 150 pounds off. Now, on its own, that sounds like a lot, but that actually depends on how much the item costs. If the item costs 1,500 pounds, then you're getting 10% off. But if instead it's a car and it costs 15,000 pounds, you're only getting 1% off. And so that's why fractions, or percentages particularly, are extremely useful in fairly and quickly comparing quantities. Another practical application you could think of is if you have a job and you're earning a salary. If they increase your wages by 5%, you want to be able to work that out. And a lot of students find the topic of percentages very daunting. And I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way, and that you can start calculating percentages right now by doing just two things: being able to multiply and divide by multiples of 10. So let's recap some practice. 1.53 times 10. The decimal point moves one space to the right. The number is getting bigger, and we have 15.3. 0.256 times 10. The decimal point moves one space to the right. We get 2.56. Part 3, 17.25 divided by 100. There's two zeros, so the decimal point moves to the left twice. That's 0.1725. And finally, part 4, 7.25 times 1,000. Three places. The number is getting bigger. We move the decimal point three spaces. In an empty loop, we put a 0. That's 7,250. So if you divide by 10, if you divide any number by 10, you get 10% of that number. If you divide by 100, because percentages are out of 100, you get 1% of that number. So if we want to work out 10% of 52, we just divide 52 by 10. 52 divided by 10 is 5.2. If we want to work out 1% of 17, we divide 17 by 100. 17 divided by 100 is 0.17. 10% of 20.5, we divide by 10. Move the decimal point one space to the left, and you get 2.05. 1% of 502. Have a think for just a second about what you would do. Did you say divide by 100? Because you're correct. If you divide by 100, you get 1% of that number. The decimal point moves two spaces to the left. 10% of 19 is 1.9. It's 19 divided by 10. And 1% of 192 is 1.92 because you divide 192 by 100. So now that we know how to divide by 10 and divide by 100, I'm going to show you how you can use that to work out just about any percentage, and with a calculator, any percentage. So let's do some calculations. 36% of 4,500. We can split this into 30% and 6%. First, divide the number by 10. That gives you 10%. So 10% of this is 450 pounds. Then divide the number by 100 and get 1%, which is 45 pounds. 3 tens will make up 30. So 450 times 3 is 30%. Times this by 3, and you should get 1,350. How many 1% does it take to make 6%? Times by 6. If you times 1% by 6, you'll get 6%. So 45 times 6 is 270. And then to get 36%, you simply add these two together. 1,350 plus 270 is 1,620. So 1,620 pounds. That's 36% of 4,500. What about 85,000? And let's approach this a different way. Instead of breaking it into 20% plus 8%, why don't we break it into 30% minus 2%? That way, we have to work out 10%, which is just this number divided by 10. That's 8,500 pounds. And to get 1%, you simply divide again, and you get 850 pounds. 30% is 10% times 3. So that's 8,500 times 3, which is 25,500. 1% is 850. So 2% must be double that, 1,700. And remember, we're going to subtract the two quantities. We're going to subtract 25,500 and 1,700, and we get 23,800 pounds. What if we want to work out decimal percentages? Well, that just involves going one step further. We want 10% plus 1% plus half, or 0.5 of a percent. We know how to work out 10%. We simply divide by 10 and get 80. We know how to work out 1%. We simply divide by 100 and get 8. But if you want to work out 0.5% is half of 1%. So we divide 8 by 2 and we get 4. And if we add these together, we get 92 pounds. 20% of 1.8 kilograms. Let's just work out 10% by dividing 1.8 by 10. So 10% is 0.18. 20% must be double that. Times by 2. Your answer is 0.36. So if you can work out 10% and 1%, you can make up just about any percentage. Now, let's look at some problem-solving questions. Anne buys a dress in a sale. The normal price of the dress is reduced by 20%. The normal price before the reduction is £36.80, and we want to find out what to subtract from that to get the current price. Well, 20% is 10% times 2, so 10% of the quantity is this quantity divided by 10. That's 3.68, so £3.68. And 20% is just double that. So we do 3.68 times 2, and that's £7.36. And this is the quantity we'll be taking away. Now, as we go on to the calculator part in another video, you'll find that there are much quicker ways of doing this, but right now we're just trying to understand the concept. So we worked out 10%, doubled it to get 20%, and now we're taking 20% off the normal price. So we do 36.80 minus £7.36, and you should get £29.44. I'm not going through the column subtraction because I'm assuming that everybody watching is okay with that. Looking at question number 2, another very practical question. William's salary is $24,000 and his salary increases by 4%, and we want to work out his new salary. So he still has the $24,000 he was getting before, but we want to add 4%. For that, we have to work out 1% first, and 1% is always divided by 100. So 240 pounds is 1%. 4% must be 240 times 4. That's 960 pounds. And so we add 960 pounds. His new salary is 24,960. And that reflects a 4% increase. Now, before we finish, I want to give you a super tip, which is a very interesting property of percentages, and that is that they are reversible. That means that 17% of 10 is actually the same as 10% of 17, and it's easier to work out 10% of 17 than 17% of 10. So if you don't want to work out 17% of 10, 10% of 17 is just 17 divided by 10, which is 1.7, and 17% of 10 is indeed 1.7. Let's look at something like this. 24% of 25 is actually 25% of 24. They are reversible. You can swap these two numbers and still get the same answer. Why is the right easier? Because we know that 25% is a quarter, and a quarter of 24 is 6, which is much quicker to work out than working out 20% and 4% and adding those together. So just another tip for non-calculator questions. Thank you for joining in on this video, and I look forward to meeting you in the next one. Thank you.